Brian here from GuitarDreams.com, and today we're going to talk about triad arpeggios. Now, I think some guitar players avoid learning about arpeggios because they think it's some complicated topic because of the fancy word arpeggio. But I mean, would you not watch cat videos if cats were referred to by their technical name? Now, an arpeggio is just a chord with the notes played individually, and a triad just happens to be the simplest of the arpeggio types, which is why we're starting there. In fact, if you already know bar chords, well, you kind of know triads. Because if you take, say, a C major bar chord and play the notes individually, well, you've just played a triad. And the plus side of learning triads is that it'll make a whole lot of other topics all the more clear when we get into other lessons, like jazz chords and other arpeggio types, and even scales and modes. And even if you don't care about any of that stuff, well, in this lesson I'm going to show you some pretty cool shapes for playing triad arpeggios on 2 strings. So let's go. I'm going to go over the following things in this lesson. I'm going to talk about what a triad is. I'm going to talk about how different triad types come about from the major scale, like major, minor, and diminished triads. I'm going to show you how to play triads using 2-string patterns. I'm going to show you how to combine those patterns and play all over the fretboard. And in the end, I'm going to show you how we can take these different triad types and come up with a musical idea. And because of all that material, this is broken down into 4 videos, so I recommend you go through them all. They all build upon one another. So with that, let's begin. First, let's take a look at a C major scale. If you saw my introduction to the major scale lesson, you might recall we used G major. I'm using C major in this lesson to talk about triads, but the idea is the same for any key. And just to review a little bit, here are the intervals that make up a major scale. So 7 notes. Anyway, take a look at my major scale lesson if you're not familiar with the major scale. So if we start from a C, we would end up playing the C major scale if we play those intervals. I could start from a D, and then I would have a D major scale. And so on. So it doesn't really matter that we're choosing C. To form triad chords or arpeggios, we start from each scale note and stack thirds, as they say, and we do this stacking twice. That just means take a note, skip one note, go to the next note, then skip another, and then go to the next note. By doing so, you are jumping a third each time, either a minor or a major third. This is what we end up with when we stack 2 thirds starting from each note of the major scale. These are all the triad chords of a major scale. I just happened to write out the tab so that you move up the A string to play each triad. But you could play that in other positions. But don't worry too much about the tab. Later I'm going to show you how to play these triad arpeggios on 2 strings, which I think you'll find pretty cool for phrasing. So let's look at each triad. If we start at C and skip D and take E and then skip F and then take G, we end up with C, E, G. Between C and E, that's a major third. Between E and G, that's a minor third. We could also look at the spacing from C to those 2 notes. C to E, we just noticed is a major third, and C to G is a perfect 5th. You know, the theme from Star Wars. So we now have the following definition for a major triad. A major triad is a major third followed by a minor third, or in terms of the intervals, the root, the third, and the perfect 5th. So we could apply that idea from any other note. If we started from D, took F sharp, and then to A, that would be a D major triad. So the definition applies no matter where you are on the neck. Moving on, if we came to D, skip E, take F, D F, skip G, take A, we would have the notes DFA, and between D and F is a minor third, between F and A is a perfect fit, or is a minor third. If we look at the intervals from D to those notes, we have D to F is a minor third, as we just noticed, and then D to A is a perfect fifth. So we now have a definition of a minor triad. A minor triad is a minor third followed by a major third, like we saw with that D, F, and A. Or we say in terms of the intervals, root, minor third, perfect fifth. And we can apply that definition to any minor triad, starting from any note. So if we started on F, took A flat, and then C, that's minor third, followed by major third. That's another minor triad. That happens to be an F minor triad. So you get the point. You can apply that definition anywhere on the fretboard. And let's move on to the next note of the C major scale, the E. You take E, skip F, take G, skip A, take B. That sounds like another minor triad. Minor third from E to G, major third from G to B. So nothing new there in terms of triad types. And then we go on to the next note, the F. Skip G, take A, skip B, take C. We have F, A, C. Sounds like a major triad. F to A is a major third. A to C is a minor third. So again, nothing new in terms of triad types. And then we move on to G. Skip A, take B. Skip C, take D. That sounds like another major triad. Major third from G to B. Minor third from B to D. And now we continue on to A. Skip B, take C. Skip D, take E. That sounds like a minor triad again. Minor third from A to C. And a major third from C to E. So nothing new. Now we move on to B, and finally something new and interesting happens. If we start at B, skip C and take D, skip E and take F. Well, that sounds pretty sinister. That's a little different. Now with this one, we have a minor third from B to D. Play down here as well. And then D to F, another minor third. Or in terms of the intervals from B to the other notes, we have the root B, that minor third to D, and now to F, we have that sinister sounding interval. That's known as a tritone, or a diminished fifth, or we say flat five. So we now have the following definition of a diminished triad. We say diminished triad is either a minor third followed by another minor third, or we say root, flat third, and flat five. And we can apply that anywhere and play diminished triads all over the place. So we have now just harmonized the major scale. That means we've taken each note of the scale and figured out which triads come about. And here's the bottom line about all this. For any major scale, the first, fourth, and fifth degree of the scale correspond to a major triad. The second, third, and sixth degrees correspond to a minor triad. In the seventh degree, that oddball one, corresponds to a diminished triad. So in C major, we had C, and then from the fourth degree F, we had another major triad type, and then from G, another major. From the second note of the scale, D, we had a minor triad. From E, we had another minor triad. And from the sixth degree of the scale, we had another minor. And then from the seventh, we had that diminished. So we've just seen all the triads that come about from major scale. We call this group of triads the harmonized major scale. If you end up studying theory, composition, harmony, jazz, then you'll see this harmonized scale written using Roman numerals. Big numeral is a major triad, small numeral with dash is minor triad, and dim means diminished. Now, there's just one other little bit of theory I need to get into, and that's inversions. And just like arpeggios weren't scary, neither are inversions. Arpeggios, inversions, cats, it's all the same, nothing scary. An inversion is just a reordering of notes. So let's go back to C major. We say root position when we start at the root note of the triad. So root position, C major, C, E, G. Now first inversion means we start at the third of the triad, in this case E, and continue playing the triad. So we would have E, G, C. And then the second inversion means you start from the fifth of the triad, so in this case G, and then play the other remaining notes. So G, C, E. And then we'd end up back on the root note, up an octave, back to the root position triad. And same deal with minor and diminished triads. If we look at A minor, that's the root position, starting from A. To play the first inversion, we start from C, and then play E, and then A. And then to play the second inversion, we start from the E, and then play the remaining notes. So E, A, C. And then we're back to the root, starting from A, and then C and E. And of course, you can play inversions all over the place, just using that idea. And same deal with diminished. That's B, D, F. First inversion, start from the D, and then play the remaining notes. And then second inversion, start from the F, and play the remaining notes. And you can play that other places, of course. So that's the theory part of the lesson, and you might not know it yet, but what you just learned is going to make all sorts of other concepts on the guitar all the easier to understand. For instance, in future lessons, when I go over how to play arpeggios using tapping, string skipping, sweep picking, I'm going to talk about these ideas again, triads, intervals. So with that out of the way, now I'm going to show you how to play these arpeggios using two-string patterns on the guitar. First, let's take a look at a C major triad. So let's go to the 13th fret B string, which is C, and then play E and G. We could also play C and E on the B string. So from here on, I'll talk about form 1 and form 2, where form 1 means we have one note on the lower string and two on the upper, and form 2 is when we have two notes on the lower string and one on the upper. So I could take the same idea and go to the D and G string and play form 1 C major. Form 2 would be playing two notes on the D string and one on the G. Now using what I showed you about inversions, we can figure out how to play that C major triad across the fretboard. So we saw first inversion. Now with second inversion, we find an E and then play the remaining note. So we could go to the 5th fret, which is a pretty big stretch. That's E, G, C. Easier to play higher up the neck. That's the form 1. Form 2, we would play E and G on the B string, and C on the E string. And how about the second inversion? We would start from G and then play the remaining notes of the triad. So we'd go to the 8th fret, G, and then C and E. That's form 1. Form 2 is a little more of a stretch. And so by knowing inversions, you can play your triads all over the neck. Now here's an exercise to help you reinforce some of these shapes across the fretboard. Here's the tab, so playing eighth notes at 100 beats a minute, and it's just a bunch of C major triad shapes. You'll notice that I'm also throwing in some other notes from the C major scale to liven it up a bit. And you'll also see this exercise involves quite a bit of position shifting. So as you get to those parts that require shifts, just look at the tab closely to see how I'm playing the exercise, and I think you'll find that my choice of slides and fingering really makes this pretty easy to play despite all the moving around. There's a 2-bar count in, and you start playing on the 3rd bar. So if you're ready, let's go. Now here it is at a considerably faster tempo. This is 16th notes at 150 beats per minute. And here's the tab. So the same exercise, just at a faster tempo. And don't worry if you can't play up the speed yet. Set your metronome to whatever tempo is comfortable at 16th notes and gradually work up to speed over the next couple months. Yeah, I'm not one of those guitarists who tries to tell you to learn to play in 30 days. And the idea behind playing this stuff at a fast tempo is that it is an amazing way to develop really good coordination so that you can play pretty much anything on the guitar, no matter how intricate. And by practicing up to speed, it'll make all the easier to play at a slow tempo. Kind of like how marathon runners use sprint training to condition themselves to run longer at slower speeds. Think of it as high intensity training for the guitar. So again, there'll be a 2-bar count in, and then start playing on the 3rd bar. So, there you have it. You just stepped into the world of Triad Arpeggios, and let's move on to part 2, where we'll look at Minor Triad Arpeggios on 2 strings.